I know there's some in, there's some in the, sorry, I just had to notice this meeting's being recorded. Um, I don't know if everyone heard that, if it was just for the hosts. Anywho, so Yia Mas, as every Greek here knows, is how we say cheers in Greek, but it is a shortened version of Stini Yia Mas, which means to our health. So I found that there was like a missing link between all of these different things from Greek or Hellenic, if you will, culture, whether it's ancient philosophy, sort of our herbal remedies, dancing, whatever, and the way that that was being perceived by not just the diaspora community, but by people in the wellness industry at large. I'll give a little bit of background on myself. Again, Kristina, and I grew up Greek American, like so many of you here. So I grew up doing Greek school, Greek dance, all of it, and very passionate about our culture, very passionate about history and philosophy. I majored in history at the University of Virginia. So I've always basically forever been researching, writing, blogging. I used to have a project called Delphi Reclaimed where I would write about Greek artists and culture. But I think, and to bring it to sort of the meat of what this evening is all about, you know, life happens and things are unpredictable and difficult. And while I was at UVA, I definitely went through some struggles that I think perhaps a lot of maybe sort of high achieving student types can relate to without getting too deep into it. Like any young seeking millennial, I found yoga and meditation. And then later on, I ended up actually working in those industries. So I started writing copy and doing marketing for a meditation company. And I'd been practicing on my own for years. It's eventually flipped to teaching. So I did a yoga teacher training. I did a meditation teacher training. I did another yoga training and found myself basically having almost, I like to joke, accidentally ended up fully in wellness. I think a lot of people here can probably relate given the sort of year that we've had collectively, that life can be tough and having tools at hand makes all the difference. I'm just kind of curious to hear as well. I know some people maybe have their videos off, but if you want to turn your video on or just sound off in the chat, who here has never meditated before? It doesn't matter, by the way, there's no like grading. It's going to be super chill. I'm just curious, maybe drop in the chat if you've never meditated before, or like raise a hand if you have your video on. No one's videos are on. So I'm going to make, let's see here. Does anyone want to raise their virtual hand? All right, cool, shy crowd. So I'm going to do what I like to do with a lot of our Yia Mas events, and that is make it experiential. So there will be a lot of talking, a lot of teaching, and we'll get into that. But before I say too much, I'm a big fan of practicing versus just talking all about it. So we are going to, oh, we have a comment. Last time I meditated was in my workshop. Amazing. So we're going to dive right in with a meditation. I know we might have some people who've never meditated. Maybe you're a seasoned meditator and you have your own practice. Doesn't really matter. And you might be asking, okay, well, what does this have to do with being Greek? We're going to get into that. But first, we're going to close our eyes and we're going to meditate. So to get started, just first things first, a lot of this practice for me is about, and by the way, y'all, my apologies. I have a little bit of a cold, so you might, you can probably hear that in my voice. I know really the picture of Stini Yia Mas over here. So without further ado, I want you to, if you're seated in a chair, have your feet flat on the ground. If you're seated maybe on a bed or on a cushion, you can sit cross-legged. If you have a practice and you want to sit in Virasana, if that means something to you, you know what it means, go for it. So find just a position where you feel really stable and you feel really grounded. And then I think for tonight, I want everyone to sit with their palms on their lap. If you feel like you've had a stressful day, a stressful week, Maybe have the palms facing down, especially if you're feeling a little bit tired. If you feel like if you feel like a little bit anxious, palms facing down. If you feel like you need to wake up, palms facing up. It'll help broaden the chest, lift the lungs. Okay. But whatever you do, find a pose and stick with it. I'm getting my phone here because we're going to actually use a timer of a bell. I'm not going to tell you how long we're meditating, but I can promise you that it is more than 7 minutes and less than 18. So the only thing you have to do here is close your eyes and breathe and follow my cues. So if your eyes aren't closed yet, please do close them. Feet flat, and take a moment before you hear this starting bell to when you hear this starting bell to to just close your eyes. And I want you to take any sort of things you need to do. If you need to like fix your shirt or something or move your hair, we want to kind of resist any sort of little things you have to do to fidget throughout this. So you hear a starting bell here shortly. So let's start by taking 3 really cleansing breaths together. And what that'll look like is taking a really deep breath all the way down to the low belly, and then exhaling out of your mouth with an audible ha. So I won't hear you, but you'll hear me. So finish whatever breath you're on, and then take a really, really deep breath and exhale out of your mouth. Good. Inhale again. And exhale. And let this one be your biggest, fullest inhale and biggest relief and release yet. Beautiful. I hope you already feel a little bit of a softening in your body. And now let the breath just find its natural course in and out through the nose, or if you're a little stuffed up, maybe in and out through the mouth. And let it be natural. So don't do anything to it, just notice the breath. And let your awareness come now to the first place in the body where you really notice the breath. So maybe it's the tip of the nose, maybe it's the low belly. And by this small act, we begin the practice of finding a one-pointed awareness. That you have something to ground you regardless of whatever noise may be going on in your mind, or in your house or apartment. And right here, right now, the eyes closed, the focus starting to turn inward. Take sort of an internal weather report. So noticing, how do I feel today? Do I feel good? Do I feel anxious? Is my mind really busy? Is it a bit more sort of slow and lugubrious, just like what's the weather inside of you right now? And then as much as you may want to dwell on that, let any thoughts or ideas around that, just let them go. And then bring the awareness back to the breath now. We're going to do a short scan of the body. So noticing first your face, your head. And this is one of my favorite things to do after a long day, especially staring at a screen. Relax your jaw, relax your eyes, even behind closed lids. The gaze behind the lids becomes more peripheral and watery. So especially if you've been straining, ungrip. You might even take your two peace fingers and put them in that place between your brows and just spread them a little bit, smoothing out that area. And let the awareness travel now lower to the neck and the shoulders. Notice here if your neck, your shoulders, if they're holding any tension. And see if you can't release. You might want to even make a couple of shrugs with the shoulders forward, up, and back. If you're me, you hear some snack crackle popping. And let it go. Perhaps each shoulder, each collarbone spreads a little more to its own side. And the awareness now travels lower to the chest, the upper back. Notice the rise and fall, the expansion and contraction. Knowing that a big part of becoming present, as we hear tossed around very often on the internet and sort of dialogues about self-improvement, it's really just being with what is. So be with and notice the sensations in your body. And now the awareness will travel even lower to the low belly area above and below the navel. And let this soften as well, especially when we're tense or we're running around a lot. We tend to sort of grip or suck in here. So let your belly just be really soft without sacrificing your posture. And breathe a little bit deeper here. It'll help soothe your nervous system. And finally, notice the limbs. See if there's sort of any residual gripping or tension here, and just let that go. And let that body scan wash away and bring the awareness back to the breath. And through this practice, we suddenly see that even just within ourselves, with our bodies and the mental landscape of our thoughts, there's a whole lot to pay attention to. And to be effective in this world, we need to modulate what we pay attention to. But let this be really, really gentle right now, and noticing, especially if you have sort of an urge to fidget or stir, is that conscious or unconscious? And as if you were training like a really cute puppy or something, just bring the awareness back to the simple, life-giving anchor of the breath. Maybe noticing the temperature of the breath, the subtle sounds that it makes, almost oceanic in their quality. Now we peel back the layers of the practice a bit more. Notice whether thoughts want to come into the mind. No, meditation isn't about stopping these thoughts. It's never about being tough with yourself or angry, pushing them away, but rather becoming aware of these thoughts so that we can become more mindful and less reactive. So as the thoughts do arise, which they inevitably will, or the urge to twitch or fix something arises, let the practice become about how quickly you can just let that go and come back to the breath. And perhaps at this point, you notice that there are the thoughts as they come and go, and then there's a part of you that's able to observe those thoughts. And suddenly things get interesting. And so staying with it, knowing that the moment you may want some to do or some judgment, reaction carry you away, start to see where that's kind of just the weather. There's an observer beyond the weather, and stay with that observer. And so as we start to come close to the last minute or so of our meditation, you might just stay observing the breath, or you may want to call to mind something you're grateful for. It can be super simple, a loved one, again, a puppy, your chair. Notice what that gratitude feels like and let it really fill you up. And in a bit, you'll hear a closing bell, but as you hear it, keep your eyes closed. I will guide you out of the meditation. And start introducing some gentle movements to the fingers, the toes, maybe like a little wiggle action. You might start making some circles with the wrists, very gently waking the body up. And then intentionally, as you're ready, there's really no rush. You might begin to open the eyelids, letting visual information and stimulation re-enter your consciousness. And really notice how different that feels in your brain now after having just turned inward for a bit and focused on the breath. Cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. So take a minute. It's cool to stretch sometimes after meditating or like shake it out a little. meditation can feel very serious, but it's just a practice. It's really just a practice of, oh, thank you all who are messaging me privately. I appreciate it. It's just a practice. It's really simple. And at the beginning of every Yia Mas workshop, we do either some sort of meditation, or when we do our Greek dance workshops, we do like a mindful movement practice. So let's dive into a little more of why we do this. So, again, as someone who worked in wellness, someone who's Greek, someone who loves history, I found that in the wellness industry, people knew so many things about Eastern yogic traditions. People know about so many herbs and adaptogens, but I was shocked to find that so many people I know outside of Greek traditions, they'd never heard of Tsaituhunu, mountain tea, or they had never heard of the ancient Greek concept of kenosis, enosis, which is finding unity and sort of a unity consciousness. So I became really curious about wanting to bridge the gap between East and West and just look at these things and really see how we can apply them to our lives. So I'm not a scholar of ancient Greek. This is not a philosophy lecture, but I do think a lot of these concepts can be found in ways that are digestible and actually used intelligently to improve our lives. So again, tonight is sort of an overview, by the way, of a lot of what we talk at Yia Mas. Some of these topics on their own, I'll do like one workshop about that whole thing. So we're not trying to be short on any sort of thing. It's just in the interest of time, we're kind of talking about the whole Yia Mas method tonight and holistic Greek health versus like diving really deep on one topic. So I find it really interesting that meditation, studies have linked it to improved memory, greater attention span. I like to think of it as sort of like weight training for your mind. So the goal is to become more mindful in your life. A very astute friend and therapist of mine said that, the idea is to come off of autopilot. So we're all, dealing with the ever-changing flux, which is a very Heraclitus topic of life. And it's important to arm ourselves with tools so that we can approach these things from an empowered place, right? The meditation really helps us develop greater self-awareness. It's a portal as well to self-inquiry. When you slow down and watch the thoughts and you tune into that observer, you're really able to take a look and be like, well, what the heck is really going on here? And I remember the first time I really got meditation, I thought my thoughts were supposed to stop. And I'm like, my thoughts don't stop. I have a really busy brain. What do you mean? And the idea is not that your thoughts are going to stop. That's never the idea, unless maybe for some of you, you have a really deep spiritual practice, or I don't know, maybe you're a sage in your other life. But the idea is really to work on this muscle of mindfulness, and meditation is the tool. So without further ado, how do we get to anything Greek from this? Firstly, I think one of the best ways to look at it is through the Delphic precept, the very famous one, often attributed falsely. I mean, I think he said it, but he didn't come up with it, to Socrates, which is to know thyself. These practices really help us to become more self-aware. Over time, they actually change your brain in really profound and healthy and amazing ways, so that something that would trigger you, or maybe you're in a meeting and your boss says something and you feel that like in your body, but you develop the tool of mindfulness so that before you feel that you're able to catch yourself. And it's really amazing. You might think like, well, this is boring, why am I doing this? Then all of a sudden one day, something that would have really gotten you off or down no longer does, and you're like, cool, I'm like a Spartan warrior. So there, again, we think of meditation as Eastern, but there are a lot of ancient Greek concepts that sort of relate to meditation. So one of my favorites is that melit, which means ponder and contemplation. She's also one of the elder muses. So most people know sort of the 9 muses of the arts, but there are actually 3 elder muses. And I see something fascinating here. There's a very early idea of art itself arising from contemplation and meditative time. So if you're a creative, whether you're creative in your work or on the side, you can use this practice and really like mine your brain for creative fodder for whatever it is you want to do. Another one of my favorite concepts is sophrosine. So this is an ancient Greek philosophy that means a healthy state of mind, also like moderation or equilibrium. In the Republic, Plato suggested that it was achieved by creating a cohesive relationship between three parts of the soul. Okay, three parts of the soul, this language is ancient, but it's cool to see that they were talking about ways to find moderation, ways to find equilibrium in the same way that meditation will help us do that. Sophrosine, was Plato actually argued sophrosine was the ultimate goal of the physician, so that like the physical ailments that you had wouldn't be cured unless you also worked on finding balance in the mind and body. And what's really cool is now we have the science to show that prolonged stress over time like is linked to dementia, not sleeping well. It's also linked to dementia. We know that stress affects us adversely, especially in the time of COVID. Y'all, it's so important to keep your mind and your body right. Like we have control over so little in this life, but we have control over our reactions, and meditation helps us cultivate that. So that's a fun segue into one of the people I wanted to talk about. So by the way, just to review, because I know I'm throwing a lot at you, you can ask me anything after this. Y'all will all have my email, so we're just moving through it quickly. So we were talking about Melit and sophrosine. I want to talk a little bit more now about Epictetus. So he was a Stoic philosopher who was a slave, and he is one of my favorite people. His whole idea was that you literally can control nothing except your reactions. So again, through this practice, we work on cultivating how to control our reactions. Epictetus was, it's a fascinating case to look at it because this is someone who came out of slavery and was able to have this power and this self-awareness. I think another thing that happens in Greek thought, and I'm making a generalization here, is that we get credited a lot with creating democracy and reasonable thought. But the fuller picture is that among the ancient Greeks and then throughout the history, and I'm using the words Greek and Hellenic interchangeably, by the way, for those who want to get nerdy about those things, we're not being too academic about it. But throughout the history, there's so much mysticism. I have an incredible book here called Greek Folk Religion. This is a very like OG academic book. And you see that the ancient Greek people, they were really connected to the land. They're really connected to the cycles of the earth. They were connected to their bodies. And then you have this whole like Apollonian versus Dionysian debate, right? I'm not going to get into that tonight. That's for another time. But there was a lot of connection to sort of our inner madness, to the ways that we can let go and lose our inhibitions. So there's a lot going on. There's not just one story. You can't really lump the ancient Greeks together, right? Now, if we want to talk about one of my favorite dudes from this time, and one whose thought really got me into researching this more on my own, we have Heraclitus. So he's a pre-Socratic philosopher. He lived in Ephesus, now obviously modern day Turkey, active around 500 BCE. And he influenced a lot of what I think like the Neoplatonists later spoke about. So he was very much into self-inquiry, the unity of opposites. His whole idea was that everything is in a state of flux. So why is that important? When we're anxious, we often try to find something to take control over. So, whether that's you're trying to be a control freak in your relationships or with food or whatever it is for you, we all have our thing or our things. It helps a lot to surrender and recognize that, like, okay, everything's always in flux. Nature's always in flux. If we take any cues from nature, we have a tendency as humans to anthropomorphize everything, but look at nature. It's wild, it's always changing, it's a little dangerous. If you ever watch like those nature documentaries on Netflix, you're like, it's wild out there. Like planet Earth is crazy. All you have control over is yourself and your reactions. So Heraclitus and Epictetus, again, two of my favorites. Highly recommend diving deeper into their work. Heraclitus actually insisted that self-knowledge was every person's birthright. So do with that information what you will. Again, I'm not diving too much into Stoicism right now because that's a whole huge topic. They weren't all Greek, but there's a really big connection between mindfulness as we know it today, the modern practices of mindfulness, and Stoicism, learning to observe and not to react. As I said before, coming off of autopilot. So that might be something for you to think about in carrying this information forward after this workshop is where in your life can you come off of autopilot? Where, what triggers you? What do you react to? And this is something that if I was doing like a deeper dive, like one really focused Yia Mas workshop, I might even ask you to journal about that. Really big fan of journaling, really great way to cultivate this self-inquiry for yourself. And I want to share actually a direct quote from Epictetus before I keep moving through a couple more concepts. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That's one. Another one, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Do with that what you will. And men are disturbed not by things, but by the view which they take of them. So again, really digging at sort of the core of human reactivity and our responses. Moving on, there's a lot of rich, juicy concepts that come from ancient Greece. One of my favorites is this idea, as I mentioned earlier, henosis and gnosis. It's a sort of classical word for mystical oneness or unity. There's a lot of information out there about how this idea sort of morphed into Christianity as we know it. Again, this is like a totally secular workshop, by the way. So just to put that out there, not anti-Greek Orthodox, but a lot of these thoughts and philosophies actually morphed into the traditions. The Greek Orthodox, and this is one thing that I love about being Greek and about our culture is that, okay, in our modern brains, Greece is thought of as so European and westernized, but we're really existing in this place where there's so much interaction between the East and the West, right? And the ancient Greeks, some of them were said to have had contact with gymnosophists, so naked wise men from the East. Again, all hearsay, no one really knows, but there's definitely some academic work about that suggests this may have happened. So back to henosis, this concept is about finding unity and unitary consciousness, one-pointed awareness. This was also, there was a center in the Platonic Academy of Athens or in Alexandria where you could go to learn how to stabilize your mind in henosis. I like to think that that's sort of what we do with meditation is like bring your mind to this one-pointed awareness and then sort of watch how all the noise dances around it, right? Like the thoughts are going to come up that like, oh crap, I forgot to do this today, or I need to send this email, and then say like, nope, I'm not going to let that take me away. I'm going to come back. On a broader, more esoteric level, it also points to the fact that we are all deeply connected as humans. And I think this is something actually that is found in Christianity. It's found in a lot of beautiful traditions all over the world, this idea of a union. We're not so separate as we think. Again, our human pride may want us to think that, but the greater wellness of the whole, just even something so simple as all of us coming together here and meditating tonight is a really important and powerful thing. Like it might not seem like it, but these things have a ripple effect out into the world that's beyond our little human comprehension, which is cool. So some spiritual teachers like Plotinus, who's one of my favorites, he really took this idea of enosis or henosis to heart. And he urged his disciples to close your eyes and awaken to another way of seeing. This is a skill everyone possesses, but few choose to use. And apparently, supposedly, his final words were, try to unite the divinity in yourself with the divine in all things. So pretty profound. I'm not going to speak too much more about that. Again, if you have questions, let me know. And then, finally, and if anyone follows Yia Mas on Instagram, I posted this today, but there's another really a great figure. Again, lots of different ancient Greek figures, not all connected, by the way, in time or schools of thought, Empedocles. And he wrote that you must plunge beneath your crowded thoughts and calmly contemplate the higher realities with pure focused attention. If you do this, a state of inspired serenity will remain with you throughout your life, shaping your character and benefiting you in so many ways. But if you direct your attention instead to the trivial things, I'm like, immediately my brain is just like Instagram. If you direct your attention instead to the trivial things most people obsess about, the silly nonsense that dulls their minds, you'll just acquire more objects, which you'll only lose anyway. So yeah, I know that one's kind of a lot. And that's why we do these practices, because you don't just wake up one day and you're like awakened and all of your bad habits are gone, and you never want to like eat a bunch of chips before you finish making dinner. Like it takes time, right, to develop habits, and ultimately habits are how you build a life. Really little tiny incremental changes that will help you A, build a sense of trust, B, build a sense of integrity with yourself. Because if you don't have integrity with yourself, everything else in your life is going to feel sort of out of whack. You're the one who has to live with yourself. Cool. So sort of the takeaway from this is, celebrate the pause, live mindfully. Meditation makes it a practice. I also love reading what a lot of these people had to say. I highly recommend the fragments of Heraclitus. If anyone's ever read the Tao, the first time I found the fragments of Heraclitus, I think I just stumbled at it in a bookstore, and I had read the Tao already. And I was like, there are so many parallels here between these two really great ancient thinkers. And, they're totally geographically separated, but they're really arising at a lot of the same ideas. And I think in our very busy notification, techie, pandemic, everything lives, a lot of this philosophy is really grounding, and it's really simple, and it's really freeing. Cool. I can't hear anyone, so I'm just interacting with myself. Cool. Thanks. One more. I just have to share this one, and I won't get too into it. Aristotle said it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. And I think that one's big. Like, studies show right now that we're all being fed more and more information that helps sort of like reinforce the echo chambers that we live in based off of our preferences. At least that's certainly the case with technology. So being able to take a step back and pause, and like, before you read the article that an algorithm probably picked for you because the algorithm knows you're going to like that article, ask yourself, like, why? And I know I'm throwing a lot at y'all, but this book, How to Do Nothing, which is really not about doing nothing at all, she speaks about some ancient Greeks in it, specifically Epicurus and Diogenes. And it's all about sort of reclaiming your attention reclaiming your mind and your attention as we live in the attention economy of the internet. So highly recommend it. Let's move on. So we're going to take a totally other turn. Also, if anyone has questions, you can put them in the chat. I can't promise I have answers, but I'll try. So I might just take a moment, and if anyone has any questions, let me know. All right, cool. So we're going to take a total turn in another direction, although of course the mind and the body are linked. And we're going to talk about some Greek herbs and sort of holistic traditions that come more from folklore and folk medicine, and essentially are Yiyadis. I love to say, there's a reason Yiyas remedies are back in vogue. And that's because we're now discovering that there is, I mean, there's not just now, but the last several years have shown a lot of science behind a lot of our herbal remedies. So I am a huge fan of Greek herbs. Our very first Yia Mas was all about Greek herbs for wellness. And it is essentially like a combination of Greek herbs and then some of these other remedies that I grew up having that really inspired me to want to talk about this, because I found all these people who knew things about like ashwagandha and reishi, and they never, like I said, heard of Saituvunu. So let's talk about Saituvunu, right? Greek mountain tea. It's known, the technical name for it, and one thing I love about the scientific names for herbs is they kind of tell the story of why they're so darn special. So known in Greek as sideritis, which means he who is made of iron. It's also sometimes called shepherd's tea because, you know, they have their provata up in the mountains. So in ancient times, in general, sideritis was a term that was used to refer to plants that were capable of healing wounds caused by iron weapons during battle. We now know Saituvunu is one of these. Saituvunu grows wild throughout Greece and the Mediterranean, particularly at high altitudes. That's how it got its name. And it is one of my favorites because it does a lot. You know, it's rich in immune boosting antioxidants and polyphenols. It's perfect for a cold and flu season. I've been drinking it all week with this head cold. And it's, you know, also been shown to aid in digestion. And many people believe that it has a calming effect, myself included. I highly recommend drinking it sometimes with little chamomile before bed. And I like to drink it loose leaf. So I'm drinking some here right now, steeping it. One thing that I love about the Greek herbs is that I think as a diaspora Greek, we're always looking for different ways to connect to our culture. At least I am. And I know when I was young, my mom would sometimes make the tea for me, the loose leaf tea. And I thought it was so weird because I was used to like the little sachets of Earl Grey or whatever. And, you know, now as an adult, it's like you realize loose leaf is better. You get more health benefits. It's far lower waste, lower impact on the environment. And, you know, there's a nice connection to, I like to think about, you know, my great grandmother used to go up into the mountains to gather mountain tea. And there's sort of something there where, you know, Arguedas and Papudes, they were all going and picking this wildly by hand. A couple more facts about Saituvunu before I get to emo on y'all. It's known to be antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and as I mentioned, antioxidant, and it's just as potent as green tea at stimulating your immune system and preventing oxidative stress. I don't know if anyone here likes Saituvunu, but I'm a huge fan. You can add some honey. I actually really like the flavor of it on its own. Cool. And I suggest brewing it for about 5 minutes, by the way. Just steep it and you throw the whole thing in, the flower and the stems. The whole plant has benefits. So it's not like you just need to pick little flowers off. So the next one we'll talk about, and we're only going to talk about 3 tonight because, again, trying to be mindful of time, is sage or fascomelo. And if you're into sort of general wellnessy things, maybe you've seen people like burn sage or burn it at a yoga studio. That is a different type of sage. There are many varieties of sage, but they are all derived from the same plant. And the original word is salvia, which actually it's derived from the Latin word to heal. Which is interesting. So again, you see sage, the very etymology of the word suggests that its usage is to help you heal and live better. In fact, the Greek physician Dioscorides, who wrote pretty much the seminal text on herbs that was like used for like at least 2,000 years, I think, throughout Europe, he recommended sage wine for, and I will read this, disorders of the kidneys, bladder, and sides, as well as for blood spitters, coughs, hernias, convulsions, bruises, and impeded menstrual flow. And Dioscorides' words, not mine. That's from the De Materia Medica, which is that very important text. And he was a Greek doctor, but he actually served the Romans. the ancient Greeks believed sage also helped protect one from evil and conferred wisdom. I find it funny how much superstition we have in our culture, between sage. There's a similar tradition with bay leaves. I'm not even going to talk about the mati, all y'all know, but we're such a superstitious people. It's very funny. The ancient Greeks also used sage to enhance mental abilities, increase fertility, and treat venomous snake bites. It's antiseptic, it's a natural digestive, and it's also great to cook with. You can add it to your roasted veggies or butters, and has a nice earthy flavor. I also frequently brew it with my tea. And if anyone has like please type in the chat the name of the tea. Yeah, I will do that. So I'm getting these messages privately. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to, so I'm trying to figure out how to message. Oh, everyone, here we go. So we have sage, we have Tsai, bear with me, Tu Vunu, which is mountain tea. And the book that a few of you asked me about is How to Do Nothing, Jenny Odell. Finally, we're going to talk about lemon balm. I love this one. Melissa officinalis is the name, and this official name derives from the Melisae. Meli, the Greek word for honey. Melisae was the Greek word for honeybees, because bees love lemon balm, and it also actually has a lemony scent to it. In ancient mythology, there's a group of nymphs called the Melisae, and they were credited to have discovered honey, and their symbol was the bee, hence how we kind of get all of these names. Again, our friend Dioscorides, who I mentioned before, he also mentions lemon balm, going back to its use in a sort of wine-infused topical ointment. The ancient Greeks were really into infusing wine. They loved to put different things in wine. It wasn't just like a party thing. This was about like different sort of treatments and ailments. Why lemon balm? This one is really great for calming and uplifting. So if your mood is a little down, if you feel that sort of seasonal, maybe depression coming on, lemon balm's a great option. It's also helpful for digestion, and it's known to be antiviral. We're not going to talk about viruses anymore, but antiviral. Cool. Does anyone maybe want to share, like, if you have a favorite Greek herb that you like to consume or anything like that? Cool. Then I'm moving on.
It's not an herb, but propoli, which is
oh, the propolis. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Anyone else want to share? All right. So quickly, let's go over some other fun little Greek remedies. My mom randomly would make lapa, which is just like rice with lemon. But that's a good one if you have an upset stomach. Lemon actually helps kill pathogens. It's good for hangovers. Who knew? Then there's just garlic, great for immunity. It's anti-inflammatory. It's antifungal. I'm not a big fan of eating garlic, but I know some people do to really help with different ailments. Another, I like to call this a Greek remedy because I'm just taking, I'm being liberal with my Greek remedies here. I think napping is a great Greek remedy. When you go to Greece and everyone just has this like agreed upon nap time, at least in the summer. There's a great article from Johns Hopkins actually that I'll share with you all right now about the benefits and the how-tos of napping. Oh yeah, Greek oregano. I see a few people are writing to me oregano. Greek oregano is actually considered true oregano, and it is like among the most potent oregano in the world. In general, the herbs from Greece and also the Balkans, like you're not supposed to say that some of the herbs are even better in the Balkans. They grow at those really high elevations, and oh, sorry, I sent that to one person instead of everyone. And the soil there in particular is sort of what helps to foster their growth and what makes them so strong. Greece actually is one of the most biodiverse countries in the EU plant-wise, and it has more endemic species than any other European country. We actually have a very diverse landscape, and the deepest waters in the Mediterranean. And because these herbs grow well at high elevations, hence their potency. Two more things and we'll move on. So this one I just like to say because I like to have fun with is racomelo. Racomelo, great one for cold season, great one for maybe needing to warm your heart as well. Never trying to tell you to drink alcohol, by the way, we're not condoning this, but racomelo made with tikudya, honey, cloves, and cinnamon. It's great. I won't go too deep into it, but cinnamon has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. Honey is incredible. I have a blog post up on this now that breaks it all down, and then it really can help soothe a sore throat. And I think it can help soothe maybe some sad spirits as well. But I don't know. I'm not a tikudya expert, and I am certainly afraid of Cretan libations because they are very strong. Finally, a fun one, and this came up in a past workshop, is cupping, or as they're called in Greece, venduzes, and a cool article about cupping I will share here. I actually have gotten cupping from a Chinese medicine doctor, but people do it in Greece as well. I find that it really helps stimulate like my body if I'm really tight, and it can also help with immunity. Cool. Does anyone have any questions as we close out our little homeopathic remedy segment? All right, so we'll move on to our final bit here, and sort of the final and possibly the most fun part of the Yia Mas equation. And my favorite thing is Greek dancing. So I think a lot of us, making heaps of assumptions here, by the way, but grow up thinking of Greek dancing as something you do at events or weddings, and maybe you just sort of do it, it's fun, or maybe you don't like it, but you don't really think about the why. A lot of what my work is about bringing intention into things and looking at the history and sort of the why. I personally think Greek dance is like the perfect antidote to our really overly techie times. And it's kind of hard to properly Greek dance and have your phone out. Just saying. I think we could all use a little bit of a respite from being so digital, especially with COVID. And I mean, we're literally doing it right now. So I think there's a lot with Greek dance. There's the human connection. Human connection is something that I could share study after study after study, linking human connection and touch to improved health, improved immunity, improved mood. It's a great antidote to depression. We're all missing it right now, by the way. Like, your girl over here really is. I get it. Another element of it is that it's just movement. If you've ever danced kotsari or malevisiotico, or like even just sustained Greek dancing for a long time, you're getting a workout in, right? So it's sort of like a built-in workout. And then I like to think of this element as well of how we dance in a circle. There's something very primal about that. The pisti, the dance floor, going back to ancient times, was often the threshing floor in a lot of ancient rites. Those where they would thresh wheat or whatever, and it's all sort of linked to the seasons, perhaps coming of age, marriage rites, and just generally finding a lot of joy. I really think that our traditions can be pushed forward into modernity, and I hope that we really all do our part to keep Greek dance alive. I don't know if anyone else here grew up Greek dancing, or like going to HDF or FDF or any of that fun stuff. I did, and I am super, super grateful for it. Another note just about the dancing, by the way, it's like some people teach like Groomba or sort of like offshoots of it. I really just believe in the power of the dance, and I think just as it is, it's awesome. Does anyone have any questions or just anything you want to share? Don't be shy. All right. Oh, it's Greek Zumba. I don't know. Groomba. Yeah. I don't know. People have like all sorts of fun stuff they do. I think that's awesome, by the way. It's just if you ever come to a Yia Mas Greek dance workshop, which we have one next week, by the way, it's we really do uh the dances, like the actual Greek dances, but we do a mindful warm up to help you get into your body so that you're a little more aware of your feet, your legs. And that way, I think, and this, I forgot to mention this, but it's one of my favorite elements of Greek dance is that it does have a meditative aspect to it. The repetition, through repetition, one of my yoga teachers says comes revelation. It's practice, it's doing something over and over again to the point of mastery. So yeah. All right, y'all. Well, that's what I have. Costa, how are you feeling? Do we want to close things up? Do we want to dance? Also, thank you all, by the way, for your attentiveness. And I'm getting lots of personal questions, so thank you. I'll throw my email in because I'm going to put my email in here because I definitely did not answer a lot of your questions. So you can shoot them to me after or just DM them to at Yia Mas, which I'm sharing here. Costa, what are your thoughts?
If you want, we can do a dance.
Oh yeah. It seems like it seems like maybe, just maybe, we should do Kotari or Tiktiplon.
Yes.
I heard someone might want to dance Podiaka. I don't know who it is, but I heard they might want to.
I'm sorry, because I messaged her that you would do that. I couldn't hold myself.
Don't worry. We've all been discussing this. It's fine. Costa has made made it known. All right, cool. All right, so everyone, I think we're just gonna Greek dance then without much further ado. I am going to pull up why don't we do a Tikdiplon? Is that cool with you, Costa?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna take out my AirPods. Give me one moment, friends.
All right, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Costa?
Yep, you're up. You're good.
I want to make sure it transitioned. Getting used to these this technology, but it's still a. All right. So if you're just standing up from sitting down for a long time, 11 out of 10 recommend some stretching and maybe some like shaking out of your hands, just becoming more aware of your body, making that transition from sitting and listening to me for a long time to moving. Do whatever you need to do to reposition yourselves. Pardon me, y'all, while I just move some things. All right. Costa, do you want me to play it?
Yeah, that works.
All right, cool. Let me make sure. Can you hear okay?
Yep.
Volume good? All right. Maybe turn your videos on so we're not just dancing by ourselves. All right, Costa, I'm taking your lead.
Yeah.
Also, if you're worried about what you look like, just get over it. No one cares.
τα σιρόπαμπουλί με ρίγασαν, τα σιρόπαμπουλί με ρίγασαν, συμπαρχάρι το κρύο, σιγάν συμπαρχάρι το κρύο.
Now really like get into your knees here.
Το κρεβάτο πομπούλι με φτερόν, το κρεβάτο πομπούλι με φτερόν, ελάι τα δανολίων, σιγά με λάι τα δανολίων. Ψυχάμψε με τερά, έλα πουλί μριζάμψε με τερά, η μάνα καθαλέησε, σιγά μη μάνα καθαλέησε.
Also, if you don't know this dance, just make it up.
Καθαλέριζαν καθαγανουνε, σογιάνι πια θα δέξε, σιγά σογιάνι πια θα δέξε.
Great, good job, y'all. Oh wow, sorry, my playlist keeps going. Stanislavs. Sorry. Once I start dancing, I like to keep dancing. So thank you all so much again. Thank you to all the messages I've gotten. We are dancing next Tuesday, by the way, a Yia Mas dance workshop where we actually break things down and I teach. We didn't do that tonight, but it's friendly for all levels, whether you have a background in Greek dance or not, it really doesn't matter. You can sign up on our website. And that's all. But again, thank you all so much truly for coming out tonight and being so attentive and hanging out and listening. I mean, I know the virtual stuff isn't everyone's favorite, but it's still really great to remember that we do have a community and we have a diaspora community, and you know, we're doing what we can to keep the spirit alive and to, you know, keep the gefi alive, because like I say, like weird times call for furious dancing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kristina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, Kalinita.
Kalinita.